Eamon Ryan, please.
Indeed, Taoiseach. The ongoing tragedy of the loss of life in this country and the potential for that to continue means that Taoiseach's absolutely right when I think if I quoted you there, the two words you said, Taoiseach, in terms as we raise the restrictions or lessen the restrictions, that they will be slow and gradual. That makes sense. But also, it was Mike Ryan from the World Health Organization, he says it will probably also, we'll have to be very quick and fast in our response, so that if there are clusters appear, we've got to be really quick to identify them and isolate everyone and manage that dance part of it. I hope that application of fast and quick can apply in other ways. And I think it is frustrating, just I think a sense of the public, particularly around the education area, for example, that if we do find out that international experience, and we need to know this quickly, shows that there is the potential safe return of educational facilities, well then we should be quick to respond to that, because there is mental health and a whole range of other issues that have to be taken into account. And even if it's in specific areas, I take an example, maybe people you mentioned the disability sector there in education tends to have smaller groupings, much more easy to manage. You know, the parents involved in that area can often be, if they're looking after a child at home now, in really difficult circumstances. So if there's the ability for us to open up such facilities quickly, well then we should act quickly, listening obviously to all our health expertise. Similarly, I think we're going to have to be quick and fast when it comes to managing the economic recovery. And Taoiseach, I hadn't intended to ask serious questions, but if you don't mind, I might just leave a small bit of time at the end and more kind of a wider statement on the need for speed in the economic recovery. Because the scale of the shock there is beyond compare. I was slightly encouraged yesterday, you heard news that there were some figures showing our manufacturing output had slightly held up during the downturn. I checked with some contacts overnight who were very directly involved and would have a good idea in terms of what's happening. And they reported back to me that unfortunately the figures are masking what is an incredible contraction, even in that area, the international manufacturing, high-tech sector, that while ostensibly the figures look like it's holding up, they say demand is actually crashing across the world, and there isn't the prospect there is not as strong as it might seem from the recent figures from recent months. And similarly, the concern when you hear talk of what's going on in the Brexit negotiations, the economic implications of that, adding to the double shock, the shock we've already got, is something that is possibly could hit in the next year, just at the time when you wouldn't want it. And critically, and again, I think there was figures reported in the papers today, was it of large numbers of people, particularly younger people, in remaining unemployed at the end of this year into next year, was 300,000 people potentially, was one figure quoted in one of the papers today. Those sort of figures raise real concern, because the mental health and consequences of that is not insignificant. So we have to act fast. And we have to act fast to get, I think, particularly our younger people back working to get the economy lifted, and that being part of our health strategy. I think in how we do that, we obviously look to previous periods where we've maybe managed away at economic difficulties. And I think we have to be careful not to kind of apply lessons from the past in this case. I don't think this is similar to what happened in the management and recovery of the financial crash, because that was due to an underlying structural problem in our economy where our property sector had bubbled up, our private debt on that and the loss of tax revenue meant that there was a restructuring of the economy needed. And that's not where we are today, because our economy going into this wasn't fundamentally very good relative shape. There wasn't, if anything, the structural problem, as identified by, I think, Danny McCoy and IBEC a number of months ago, was that the state actually needed to expand its capability in housing, in public transport, in water infrastructure, in other infrastructure to support the economy. So it wasn't, the underlying problem wasn't one that we're going to have to contract anything. In fact, we were in an underlying economic situation where we were going to have to expand our state enterprise and state capability. And again, similar, I think we should be careful to avoid the kind of the experience of the 80s were similar, if those of us old enough to remember it, where that youth unemployment was such a damaging and disastrous kind of consequence of the economic recession we serviced then. The way we managed out of that in terms of late 80s is not going to be the same. That kind of getting our budget in order, that's not the problem now, and therefore we shouldn't revert back to that as a solution. The circumstances were so different. Our interest rates in the early mid-80s were at 16% for mortgage, and now that the state's creditworthiness, the understanding of the strength, the underlying strength of our economy before this crash means it's a very different circumstances. So that just leads me to the kind of economic analysis that actually our response does have to be a increase in borrowing, a fairly dramatic initial increase in borrowing, and for it to continue to as the economy lifts, for be able to be the deficit to be reduced, but not to be afraid in this autumn and probably run into a path over whatever number of years it would take us to do it effectively, as the correct economic response to this crisis. And I believe in terms of the ability for us to do that is obviously contingent on having low interest rates. And I think we're right not to just rely on the ECB in that regard. We should be maintaining our kind of creditworthiness. But I think that will happen best when we are seen to be taking and acting fast and quickly in using this economic strategy to address the fundamental underlying problems, which are the need to increase our public infrastructure, the need to get our young people back working, the need to protect against any Brexit shock. Anyone looking at a country doing that would say, yeah, that country is on the right path, that country is a good safe haven in these difficult international times. So the question, I think, is to a certain extent, with that borrowing, how do we actually in real terms use it to manage those three difficulties, challenges, amazing challenges we have, to improve public infrastructure, to get our young people back working particularly, which wasn't the problem 6 months ago, but it sure as hell is now, and to stimulate demand by doing that, and also to manage any Brexit risks at the same time. And to do it, this comes back to where I say at speed, because it's really important. If you're on the dole for 6 months or 9 months, I've been there myself, it very quickly saps your confidence and your ability, and it will just further see us an increase in the savings and people hunkering down, and that breaks us back into a worse position. So we need to be quick. We need to be quick in the building of public housing. I'm glad that our construction workers are going back to work next week. They have a good record and the ability to do health and safety. So I think we should be really enterprising, all of us in our local authorities, in our departments, government departments, to get housing back quickly and high quality housing close to where the centres. I think we could do something similar in transport. Really, we're seeing it happen in Dublin, where we're kind of using this opportunity with empty streets to reconfigure it. We should be getting every engineering company, every capability we have in the state to actually make this really quick transition to do what we have to do to improve our bus, cycling and walking infrastructure. And that it's not a huge employment centre, but it will be one aspect of the economy that we need to act quickly to do it, and in that it would be an immediate economic stimulus. We need similarly in health, to my mind, to make sure that our procurement rules are flexible, and so that we're employing every Irish online computer consulting systems companies to actually make sure we get real efficiency in our health system as we change it towards a much more online system in these coming months. And it is months we're talking about here, not years, to be able to kind of turn the economy in the latter part of this year into next year, into the year afterwards. Similarly with retrofitting, we need to be, and this is where we could employ, I mean, this autumn, why not 20,000 apprenticeships starting which is what the IC2, Irish Congress Trade Unions, estimated, I think correctly, is the sort of numbers we'd need to meet our retrofitting targets. And start now. Start saying, young people, there's going to be work in this for the next 20 or 30 years, so this is good work to get started, but start with 20,000 apprenticeships because that's a very productive, good use of money. It's saving us in a whole range of different ways. And I could go on in terms of the same sort of employment of people to re-wet our bogs, to that farming scheme, as Mike Fitzmaurice or others have been talking about it, where we would go to every farm and say, put aside a hectare. We're going to pay you for that to be a native woodland area. And start this autumn fencing it out. Start this autumn getting the agricultural advisor visiting and paying people, because that's a direct protection against any Brexit shock to the farming community, better than any other, and it's huge consequential benefits down the line. But we need to be quick in terms of getting that sort of thing going. The same in food. And the real problem is going to be in our retail sector, in our leisure sector, and creative industries. So if we were quick in food and saying, kind of, let's ramp up our organic scheme, but let's also use this opportunity to some of the empty retail spaces that are going to come forward. Let's convert them using our community enterprise schemes, our local enterprise authorities, local authorities, to say we're setting up new market, retail, community. We're setting up new distribution systems for local food to local people, with local cooks being involved in new ways of doing business. We have to be quick here, and it has to be in every town, in every street, in every way, creating a vibrant new economy out of this downturn. I'm sorry, I've gone over time, and I haven't even given you a minute, Taoiseach, to answer a question. Apologies. But it's just, I think it's important. We're going to have to be quick on the economy now. And I was got lots of running myself. Apologies, Count Corley.
Thank you, Deputy Ryan. Deputy